Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The quietest betrayal. It started with perfume, not her usual floral kind. This one was sharper, vanilla and smoke. Subtle, but different enough for Nolan Briggs to pause outside their bedroom doorway, his lawyer instincts pinging like a bad cross-examination. He'd come home early. A flight from Austin got canceled, storm delay. She wasn't expecting him until midnight. It was 7:12 p.m. The house was dim. Quiet. Too quiet. He set his briefcase down slowly. No heels on hardwood. No laughter from the TV. Just silence thick enough to press against his chest. He walked upstairs. The door to their bedroom was cracked just an inch. Enough to see movement, a figure slipping out of sight toward the balcony. Nolan didn't speak, didn't barge in. He walked to the side hallway instead and opened the app on his phone. The newly installed Nest camera gave him a clean shot of the bed. Foot of the frame, just past the edge of their comforter, two silhouettes kissing. Her fingers were in the man's hair. His hand gripped her waist like he'd done it 1,000 times. Nolan's thumb hovered above the record button. Click. The screen froze for a moment before the motion sensor feed locked in. Crystal clear audio. Delaney's voice, low and breathy. Laughing. "God, we're so bad," she said. The man replied, "Only if we get caught." Nolan didn't feel his heartbeat speed up. It slowed. Cold. Controlled. He walked back downstairs, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and sat at the kitchen island. Watched them through the camera feed like he would any other piece of evidence. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just confirmation. They'd underestimated him. And that was going to cost them everything. But first, who the hell was the man in the video? I've been working really hard on both my channels, writing, editing, everything by myself. And trust me, I'm not a professional. I'm learning as I go. Every story I write, every topic I cover, it all comes from the heart. I'm trying to bring you stories that you might enjoy. But still, there are people who leave hate comments, negative feedback, and that hurts sometimes. I know not every story is for everyone. We all have different tastes. But for those of you who support me, show love, and subscribe, your kindness is what keeps me motivated. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if you're new here, or if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider clicking that button. It really helps me stay inspired and bring you even better, more emotional stories. I've also started a new channel called Betrayal Stories Lab, where I share deeper, more intense stories with powerful endings. The link is in the description, just one click. It would truly mean the world to me. Thanks again for being here. Your support means everything. 2 weeks. That's how long Nolan let it ride. Every night, Delaney kissed his cheek and said she was heading to the gym or to a fundraising committee meeting. And every night, Nolan watched her leave in yoga pants, only to change into something skin-tight and black in the car. The side mirror cam caught the switch. The dash camera he had under her car's console caught the rest, where she drove, who she met, what doors she walked into. He used a second burner phone to track her car's GPS in real time. At 7:46 p.m. every Thursday, she parked outside a condo complex in Lakewood. Unit 4C. Same one. Every time. The man? Reese Maddox. Nolan knew him well. His own goddamn junior associate. Bright. Hungry. Fresh out of Georgetown Law with a charming smile and a Rolex that should have been way out of his salary league. But Nolan had seen the warning signs now in retrospect. Whispers around the office. Fast-tracked case approvals, Delaney's sudden interest in his firm's community outreach wing. Reese wasn't just sleeping with Nolan's wife. He was using her. But for what? That's when Nolan checked the nonprofit ledger. It was a small charity, technically Delaney's idea, but Nolan had attached his name for clout. Legal oversight. Safety. It funded youth programs and had access to generous grant money. The last transfer, $25,000. The memo line read, Community Property Outreach. But the receiving account? It belonged to a dummy LLC linked to Reese Maddox. Jesus Christ, Nolan whispered. The affair wasn't the endgame. It was the distraction. The real play was financial. and Nolan's name was now connected to a fraud he hadn't even signed off on. So, this wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about survival. Nolan didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't even raise his voice. He did what any seasoned attorney would do. He built a case. On Monday, he told Delaney he had an out-of-town trial and kissed her forehead before heading to the airport. Instead, he rented a suite across town. From there, he logged into his home's security system, tapped into the phone mirroring app he'd installed on her secondary device, and began recording every message, voice note, and picture exchanged between her and Reese. By Thursday, he had hours of footage, dozens of screenshots, a perfect digital dossier. Reese, when he finds out, it'll be too late. The paperwork's already processed. He won't even know he signed a grant approval. Delaney, you sure? I mean, it's his name on it. Not mine. Reese, exactly why it works. Nolan's jaw tightened, but his hands were steady. He didn't drink, didn't even blink too long. He created 3 encrypted backups of the data and forwarded one to a private investigator he'd used on a RICO case last year. Then, he made 2 calls, one to a forensic accountant, one to his old law school friend, now a high-ranking IRS agent. Delaney had no idea. That night, she came home smelling like sandalwood and sex, kissed Nolan like nothing was wrong. "You're tense," she said, rubbing his shoulders. He smiled, gently. Just a heavy case. And in that moment, looking her dead in the eye, Nolan realized something chilling. She believed she was smarter than him. That was her real mistake, and it would be the reason she lost everything. Saturday morning, Nolan sat in his study, the one room Delaney rarely entered. On the screen, paused security footage. He zoomed in, frame by frame, until the man's face turned clearly toward the hidden balcony cam. Reese Maddox. Expensive haircut. That same smug expression he wore during firm meetings when he thought no one noticed him cutting corners. And now, here he was, shirtless, smiling, hand on Nolan's wife's back like it was his home. Nolan leaned back. He didn't clench his fists, didn't grind his teeth, but he stared at the screen like it owed him a confession. He clicked play. The audio rolled. "Delaney, he's smarter than he looks. We need to move fast. Reese, he's blinded. He still thinks you love him. That's your edge. Delaney, laugh softly. He's too careful to love anything blindly." The room went cold. Nolan pressed pause. The weight of that sentence didn't hit like a punch. It slid in like a scalpel. Controlled. Personal. Real. She didn't just cheat on him. She profiled him. A few months back, Nolan had taken Reese under his wing, mentored him, gave him FaceTime with high-profile clients, made introductions. A year ago, the guy was billing parking tickets. Now he was driving a leased Mercedes and sleeping with the boss's wife. And worse, using her to filter stolen grant money into offshore accounts. The nonprofit Nolan had founded in his late brother's name. They weren't just betraying him. They were desecrating what mattered. He picked up his phone and dialed the investigator. "Cole," he said calmly. "I want full surveillance on Reese. Condo, phone, financials. Dig until you hit something ugly. Then keep digging." Click. This wasn't revenge yet. It was still discovery. Sunday came quiet. Delaney was in the kitchen blending a green smoothie like her hands hadn't choked his career overnight. Nolan watched her from the archway, coffee in hand. She wore one of his old sweatshirts, the same one she'd worn the night he proposed. He almost laughed. "How's the prep for the fundraiser going?" he asked casually. She turned, smiled too wide. "Good. Long week, though? I think I've got a migraine coming on." He nodded slowly. "You should rest." She blinked, almost startled by the softness in his voice. "You sure? You don't mind going to your mom's solo?" "I'll manage." She walked up and kissed his cheek, just like always. But her eyes weren't present. That afternoon, Nolan drove to Lara's place. She opened the door like she'd seen a ghost. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," he said, "but I think we should talk." She hesitated. "Delaney doesn't know you're here, right?" Nolan's silence was her answer. Inside, he didn't waste time. He slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything on there is from the past 2 weeks. I know about Reese. I know about the shell company. I know about the money. Lara's face changed. She sat down slowly, pressing her palm to her temple. Jesus. You weren't supposed to. I'm not here for permission, Lara. I want names. Anyone else involved. She swallowed hard. Nolan, this isn't just an affair. Reese is tied to someone. Judge Merton. They've been laundering cash through multiple nonprofits for over a year. Delaney was just a gate. A willing one, Nolan said coldly. Lara looked up. You're going after them? I'm not going after them, he said. I'm going to bury them. And he meant every word. Monday morning. The firm was buzzing, coffee machines humming, interns scrambling between offices. Nolan walked in wearing a charcoal suit and an expression no one dared question. Calm, composed, but unreadable. He didn't go to his office. He went straight to the IT department. Pull me last month's login data, he said to Josh, the systems manager. Every file Reese touched. Every IP address. Every offsite login. Josh blinked. Should I loop in HR? No, Nolan said. Just make sure it doesn't get back to him. 10 minutes later, he was scrolling through access logs. Reese had logged into 2 shared drives Nolan hadn't authorized. One of them contained scanned forms from the nonprofit, forms Nolan had never seen, but were digitally signed using his credentials. He leaned forward. He forged my approval. Digital timestamps, IP spoofing. It was sophisticated, but not bulletproof. And now, Nolan had evidence of both the act and the cover-up. He tapped his phone, pulled up the hidden camera footage from home. Another conversation, this time from Sunday night. Delaney, you're sure the money's clean? Reese, stop worrying. The LLC's out of Belize. Nolan won't know what hit him until it's in headlines. Delaney, and you're sure the judges got our back? Reese, Merton wants the land. He'll sign off anything. We just need a few more weeks. A few more weeks? Nolan smiled to himself. They didn't have days. He downloaded everything to a secure drive and made 2 copies. Then, as he left the IT floor, he passed Reese in the hallway. Morning, boss, Reese said, too chipper. Nolan smiled back, perfectly polite. Morning. Busy week ahead. And inside, he knew. This wasn't chess anymore. This was execution. Tuesday evening. Nolan stood in front of the mirror, tightening his cufflinks. Crisp navy shirt, tailored charcoal blazer. Understated, clean, controlled. His expression didn't give away the war unfolding behind his eyes. Downstairs, Delaney was finishing her makeup. You sure you want to go tonight? She called out. You've looked wiped all week. He descended the stairs slowly, fixing his collar. I wouldn't miss it. It's our foundation's gala. Big night, remember? Delaney turned, lips painted a careful crimson. You're right. Big night. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She was getting good at pretending. But so was he. By 7 p.m., they were at the ballroom. Laughter bounced off marble walls. Tables dressed in gold and white. Champagne flowed like no one here knew how deep the lies ran beneath it all. Nolan moved through the crowd like a politician. Handshakes, smiles, eye contact, and every now and then, he glanced toward the bar, where Reese was chatting up a state senator. Reese hadn't seen him yet. Delaney approached with 2 flutes of champagne. Reese just arrived, she whispered with a smile. Good, Nolan said. I was hoping he'd make it. She clinked her glass to his. To a clean year ahead. He sipped without looking at her. Oh, I think it's going to be unforgettable. An hour in, he took the stage for a short welcome speech. Tonight's about community, trust, integrity, he said, voice steady through the mic, and sometimes it's about shining light into dark corners. Some in the crowd chuckled politely. Delaney tilted her head, confused. Nolan's eyes scanned for Reese, who froze as Nolan's gaze locked on him. Just a glance. That's all it took to twist the pressure just a bit tighter. The trap wasn't sprung yet, but the bait? Fully swallowed. It was well after midnight when Nolan pulled into Lara's driveway. Again, she opened the door in a sweatshirt, hair tied back, eyes cautious. You're pushing it showing up here this often. I'm past caring, Nolan said, stepping inside. He didn't sit, just stood in the entryway, letting the silence hang. You said Merton was involved, he continued. How deep? Laura folded her arms. Reese and the judge go back. Quiet real estate deals. Cheap land from nonprofit donations, flipped into private luxury properties. Clean on paper, dirty under the hood. And Delaney? She was Reese's way into your ledger. Your name gives it legitimacy. Nolan's jaw twitched. You helped them. I didn't know it was this bad. She snapped. I thought it was just money skimming. Reese said you'd never feel it. He made it sound like you were too checked out to notice. I wasn't checked out, Nolan said, voice razor sharp. I was trusting my wife. Laura flinched. Then, she said you were cold, distracted, that you cared more about winning trials than being a husband. Nolan exhaled. So she picked someone with a smile and no spine. She picked someone who told her what she wanted to hear, Laura muttered. He looked at her. And you? Lara's voice dropped. I stayed quiet. That's on me. I thought if I didn't say it out loud, I wasn't part of it. He walked past her and opened the front door. She called after him, voice soft. You're not going to forgive her, are you? Nolan stopped, glanced over his shoulder. This isn't about forgiveness, he said. It's about making sure she never does this to anyone again. Then he left. The door clicked shut behind him. Wednesday morning hit colder than usual. Nolan sat in his office, blinds drawn, reviewing the nonprofit's financials. He'd requested hard copies, not digital, a detail that confused the accounting team, but he wasn't taking chances. Too many digital trails were already being tampered with. The numbers were tight. Nothing obvious. But Nolan didn't look for noise, he looked for silence. And there it was. A $75,000 donation, processed, cleared, and vanished. Not misfiled. Not moved. Gone. He traced the money back to a private donor known for supporting youth shelters. The donation was supposed to go toward building a new rec center in 5 Points. But the money had never reached the builder's invoice. He checked again. Same routing number Delaney had submitted 3 weeks ago. He opened the camera footage from that same day. Delaney in the study, papers spread across the desk. She signed the transaction with Nolan's digital signature. She even paused for a second, looked at his framed law license on the wall, before hitting submit. Nolan watched the playback 3 times. No guilt. No hesitation. He picked up the phone. Cole, I need full asset tracking on a shell company. Just found a $75,000 ghost transfer. Names Civic Future Holdings. Check Reese's connections. Cole's voice cracked through the receiver. Already seen it pop up. You're going to want to see where it leads. Send everything to the burner drive. He hung up and stared at the screen. This wasn't just adultery. Wasn't just fraud. This was character assassination, built slowly, piece by piece, with his name as the weapon. And Nolan Briggs? He was done playing defense. Thursday morning, Delaney made coffee like nothing had changed. She was humming. God, she was humming. Like the house wasn't burning around her and she didn't smell the smoke. Nolan came down the stairs in silence. No tie, no briefcase. Just clean clothes and a stillness she couldn't read. You're not going in today? She asked, turning. No hearings, he replied, grabbing a mug. Taking the day. She hesitated. Everything okay? Why wouldn't it be? She watched him, searching for a flicker of emotion, a crack. But Nolan gave her nothing. Just calm eyes and the kind of silence that made people confess. I was thinking, she offered, pouring almond milk. We should take a weekend away. Reconnect. You've been distant lately. He almost laughed. Instead, he sipped his coffee and nodded. Sure. Let's plan something. Delaney smiled. Relief softened her shoulders. She thought the danger had passed. She thought he was pulling closer. But Nolan wasn't reconciling. He was disconnecting. That afternoon, he moved half his clothes into a storage unit under a friend's name, cleared personal files from his home office, removed valuables from the safe and replaced them with paperweights and decoy files. He didn't slam a door, didn't write a note. He just began the exit quietly, like a man who'd already made peace with the end. By nightfall, he was back home, seated at the kitchen table, typing on his laptop while Delaney scrolled through vacation packages on her tablet. Beach or mountains? She asked, smiling like a girl in love. Nolan didn't look up. Whichever one you can still afford when this is over. She blinked. What? He smiled faintly. I said, either sounds nice. And that was it. Another day passed. Another step toward the fall. Friday. Nolan arrived at Cole's office. No signage, no receptionist. Just a single steel door in an industrial unit near the tracks. Cole was already inside, walls lined with whiteboards and monitors. A case file 3 inches thick sat open beside 2 coffee cups. Reese has 3 offshore accounts, Cole said, pointing at the screen. Civic Future Holdings is one. The other 2 link back to Belize and the Cayman Islands, registered under different aliases, but the routing's identical. Delaney approved every transaction. Nolan nodded once. Anything on Merton? Cole pulled up another feed, hotel surveillance. Merton met with Reese 2 weeks ago. A cash envelope changed hands. No audio, but the motion's clear. I've looped in a guy who specializes in money trail software. We're mapping transactions tied to 2 recent court cases where Reese's fake nonprofits were listed as donors. Nolan's voice was low. They're laundering political bribes through charity fronts. Cole exhaled. And you're the signature. I know. They sat in silence for a beat. Want me to leak it anonymously? Cole asked. Not yet, Nolan said. We go slow. Quiet. 1 nail at a time. He stood, picked up a folder, and tapped the edge. This isn't just about getting them caught. It's about control. I want them alive while it crumbles. I want them to watch it collapse. Cole smiled. Cole. Nolan buttoned his coat. Clean. That evening, Nolan drafted the opening letters of a federal fraud inquiry and timed it for submission with the help of his friend at the IRS. No trail. No mention of his name. He uploaded a package of falsified grant approvals, evidence only the right eyes would know to look for, and labeled it urgent. Conflicts of interest. He didn't need a judge. He just needed the system to turn on itself. Saturday night. Delaney made steak. Rare, his usual. Poured them both a glass of red. Candlelight flickered across her cheekbones like they still had a future. You've been quiet, she said over dinner. Long week, Nolan replied, cutting into his food. She twirled her wine. I got an email today. Civic Future is being reviewed by the Foundation Board. Said it's a routine check, but Nolan didn't react. Could be nothing. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Feels like something. He looked up. Why? Something I should know. She smiled tightly. You tell me. For a second, just a second, the air between them thickened. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Neither did his. Then she leaned forward. You know, if something's wrong, you can tell me. He tilted his head. You first. Delaney blinked, thrown off. He wiped his mouth with a napkin, folded it. I talked to Laura. The smile dropped. She's been real helpful. Delaney's voice turned cold. You shouldn't be involving her. You shouldn't have involved me. She stood. What are you doing, Nolan? He looked up at her, steady. You ever watch a house of cards fall? How slow it starts. How quiet. Her hand trembled. I'm not threatening you, he said. I'm reminding you what happens when someone smart finally stops pretending. She stared at him, lips parted, but no words came out. He pushed his chair back. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. She didn't stop him, didn't follow, and for the first time in their marriage. Delaney was scared. Monday morning, 8:15 a.m. sharp. Nolan walked into the downtown courthouse, polished shoes echoing against the marble floors. But he wasn't here for a hearing. He wasn't carrying a case file, just a plain white envelope tucked neatly inside his blazer. He took the elevator to the 8th floor, Judge Merton's private chambers. The secretary recognized him instantly. Mr. Briggs? He's in a meeting. Nolan didn't stop. He'll want to see me. He pushed through the office door. Merton looked up from his leather chair, startled. Nolan? What the hell? Nolan closed the door behind him. Calm. Intentional. He placed the envelope on the judge's desk. Just wanted to give you this before it circulates. Merton eyed it but didn't touch it. What's in it? A copy of your hotel meeting with Reese. And the Belize account statement. Merton's face drained. Also included, Nolan continued, are 3 nonprofit donation trails linking you directly to shell accounts that, Conveniently, approve every zoning request Reese puts in your lap. You're bluffing. You're slipping. Merton's jaw clenched. What do you want? Nolan leaned in, quiet. I want you scared. I want you nervous. I want you wondering which hallway you'll be arrested in. This isn't how the game works. It is now. Nolan turned, opened the door halfway, then paused. Judge, he added without looking back, when it all burns, I'm making sure the first call the feds make is to you. Then he walked out. Not a raised voice. Not a threat. Just pressure, applied exactly where it would crack first. Back at the office, Nolan didn't go to his desk. He went to the firm's compliance archive, access restricted, but he had the key. Inside were boxes of signed grant approvals, original hard copy forms from Civic Future and 3 other nonprofits Reese had audited last quarter. Nolan pulled out one at random. His signature. His letterhead. Except, he never wrote it. He grabbed 3 more. Same thing. Every document was designed to frame Nolan as the insider, the one orchestrating fraud while Reese played the innocent administrator. And Delaney? She was the courier, the go-between, the loyal wife who just helped with the paperwork. It was brilliant, sickening, dangerous. He made scans, dated everything, sealed them in folders marked for his attorney. Then he called Laura. She picked up on the second ring. You need to come clean, Nolan said. I already told you everything I know. No, you didn't. I found forged documents in the firm's archive. I need to know who planted them. She was silent. Laura. A breath. Then, it was me. Nolan stood still. I didn't know what they were at first, she continued. Reese said you needed approvals fast. That it was temporary. He paid me. Not much. Just enough to cover some bills. How many? 6. Maybe 8. I stopped counting. Nolan didn't shout. He just nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Text me a list of everyone you touched. If you lie, once, I burn you with the rest of them. Click. He sat down at the edge of the records desk. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a setup, and he wasn't just fighting for revenge. He was fighting for his entire future. Later that week, Nolan sent an anonymous text to Reese's office number. You sure she's not playing both sides? Check her activity from last Tuesday. Civic Future's transfer didn't go through until he signed it. No name. No number. Just bait. By noon, Reese had stormed out of the office. By 5, his car was parked outside Delaney's yoga studio 2 hours before her shift ended. By 6:30, Nolan watched from a distance as they argued outside her car. He couldn't hear the words, but the body language said everything. Reese's arms flailed. Delaney pointed back toward him, furious. Accusations. Doubt. Panic. The cracks were forming. Back home, Delaney was quiet. She didn't ask about dinner. Didn't ask about Nolan's day. She just poured herself a drink and stared at her phone like it might punch her. Nolan sat across from her on the couch. Casual. Rough night? She blinked. What? You seem tense. She hesitated. Reese thinks someone's feeding you information. Nolan sipped his scotch. Should he be worried? She didn't answer. He leaned forward, voice calm. Delaney, do you know what makes a conspiracy fall apart? She looked up, wary. Trust, he said. It's always the first thing to go. She stood and walked away, glass still in hand, her steps unsteady. Upstairs, she locked the bathroom door for the first time in years. Nolan didn't follow. He sat in the quiet and smiled, because now the real damage had begun. It was buried inside the lining of a worn-out designer tote she never carried anymore. Nolan had been watching Delaney's habits long enough to know which purse she clung to and which one she left untouched for weeks. He picked that one, the forgotten one, the one she hadn't used since their anniversary dinner 2 months ago, right before things started unraveling. Inside, beneath a makeup pouch with dried-out mascara and an expired gym pass, was a burner phone. Locked. Nolan didn't guess. He cloned it, took it to Cole's team, and mirrored the drive within an hour. The screen lit up with thousands of messages. Not just with Reese, but with 3 unknown contacts, one of them coded under JF_Civic. Jack Foster, Civic Future's false director. The phone was a blueprint of their operations. voice notes, transfer schedules, coordinated tax filings. Even timestamps linked directly to legal documents Nolan's own firm had processed. He scrolled slowly, then stopped. A text from Delaney, dated 3 weeks back. If Nolan finds out, we'll say it was all Jack. That I was just used. He always believed I was naive. That's our best out. His hand gripped the edge of the desk. Not angry. Not broken. Just sharp. Cold. She was preparing her escape route. A fall guy. And she was already scripting Nolan's role in her defense, the oblivious husband who signed without reading. He set the phone down. She wasn't just lying to him. She was building her defense against him. And now? He was going to make sure she'd need it. Thursday, 6:45 a.m. Nolan stood in front of his bathroom mirror, knotting his tie like a soldier buckling armor. Every motion deliberate. Clean. Today wasn't about hints or whispers. Today was the first real strike. By 8 a.m., he was in the office conference room with 2 partners, Rachel Kim and Marcus Eldridge. Both senior. Both with enough weight to back a quiet internal audit. Nolan dropped 3 folders on the table. Civic Future, Merton's land deals, and Reese's unauthorized fund transfers. Rachel flipped through the papers, eyes narrowing. You're saying Reese laundered money through the firm? I'm saying he used my signature. And Delaney, my wife, is connected to the transactions. Marcus leaned back. You realize how explosive this is? I realize if we don't move now, the fallout will drag this firm down with them. Rachel closed the folder. What do you want us to do? Nolan looked at them steadily. Start the audit. Quietly. Today. And Reese. I want him suspended from all client access. Lock out his account. Make it look routine. Rachel hesitated. And your wife? Nolan's jaw ticked. She's not my wife anymore. She's a liability. They didn't argue. By noon, Reese was locked out of the system. His assistant was told it was a compliance maintenance protocol. He didn't question it until he walked into the break room and saw Nolan watching him from across the glass. No words. Just a stare. Measured. Final. Reese didn't smile. He just left the room fast. The game board was flipping. And Nolan? He had every piece ready to move. Friday night. Downtown. A high-profile ethics panel hosted at the University Club. Judges, attorneys, donors, media. Nolan wasn't supposed to speak, but he had something urgent to address. He took the mic at 7:40 p.m., dressed sharp but plain. No theatrics. No opening jokes. Just steel in his voice. I've spent 16 years in law, he began, defending people who were set up, lied to, manipulated by those they trusted most. He paused, scanning the room. But sometimes the manipulation starts at home. Sometimes the fraud wears a familiar face. People shifted in their seats. Nolan clicked a remote. A projection screen lit up behind him. Slide 1. A grant approval form bearing his forged signature. Slide 2. A wire transfer from Civic Future to a real estate holding firm tied to Judge Merton. Slide 3. A time-stamped email from Reese, sent to Delaney, planning the fund funneling through shell companies. Gasps. Murmurs. Rachel and Marcus sat near the front, stone-faced. Nolan didn't name names. He didn't need to. The document spoke louder than he ever could. I won't answer questions tonight, he said. This is just the start. But for the sake of every client who trusted my name. I'm cleaning house. Applause didn't follow. Silence did. The kind of silence that kills reputations before the headlines do. Nolan stepped off stage, walked straight past the bar, where Reese stood frozen, glass in hand. Their eyes met. Reese didn't move, didn't speak. And Nolan? He didn't even blink. Saturday morning came with rain, steady, cold, relentless. Nolan sat at the breakfast table, black coffee untouched, as Delaney moved around the kitchen like they were still something. She was overperforming again. Toast. Fruit. Oatmeal she knew he didn't like. He watched her with the patience of a sniper. You said we'd plan a getaway, she said softly, sliding a plate toward him. Maybe Aspen? Just us. A reset. He didn't answer right away. She gave a little laugh. Come on. We need it. It's been tense lately. Tense, he said, his voice flat. Is that what you call it? Her smile faltered. I saw the news, she said, trying to sound casual. People are saying crazy things about Civic Future, about Reese, about you. He met her eyes. You believe them? She hesitated too long. I don't know what to believe anymore. That was it. Her first honest answer. Nolan stood, placing his untouched coffee in the sink. Then you're finally catching up. He walked past her, grabbing his keys. She followed. Where are you going? He stopped at the door. To make sure I'm not the only one under fire when this explodes. Delaney's hand tightened around the edge of the counter. If you drag me down with him, I'm not dragging you. Nolan cut in. You climbed into the hole yourself. Then he left. And for the first time since the affair began, Delaney looked shaken. Not because she was caught, but because she realized Nolan wasn't bluffing. That afternoon, Reese called Laura. He didn't text, didn't email. He called. Panicked. I need to talk to you, he said the moment she picked up. Somewhere private. I told you. I'm out, she said, voice low. This isn't about you being in or out. I need to know what Nolan knows. Laura was silent. Laura, I don't know what he has, she said. But if he's come this far, he's not bluffing. You should disappear before it gets worse. Disappear. Reese snapped. I built this. I brought her in. He was sleeping through his whole damn life. I just woke her up. Lara's voice dropped. You didn't wake her up. You corrupted her. Reese went quiet. Then, you think he'll stop with just exposure? He's gonna burn it all. You. Me. Her. Merton. Good, she said. Maybe we deserve it. Reese's voice was lower now, desperate. He's not just coming for us, Laura. He's building a narrative. A perfect one. And I'm not going to prison for a plan she helped write. He hung up. Laura sat on her couch, staring at her phone. Her apartment was quiet. Her hands were shaking. Because Reese wasn't scared of Nolan's evidence. He was scared Nolan might win the public first. And that was the most dangerous kind of loss. Sunday morning. Cloudless. Crisp air. A false peace. Nolan walked the perimeter of his old high school's football field. No camera. No voice recorder. Just steps on frost-covered grass and a mind bracing for war. Cole met him at the bleachers, holding a slim folder. It's all timed, he said. Federal request on the shell companies drops tomorrow. IRS leaks follow on Tuesday. Judge Merton's ethics committee receives your packet Wednesday. If we time the press release right, they fall in sequence, Nolan finished. Not all at once. One hit at a time. Cole nodded. And Reese. Let him run in circles. He'll self-destruct if he thinks the walls are still a few feet away. Cole hesitated. And Delaney? Nolan looked out at the field, where kids were just starting to gather for a youth game. Laughter echoed across empty bleachers. She was the only person I never cross-examined, he said quietly. That was my mistake. Cole didn't reply. He didn't need to. Nolan turned. After Wednesday, I'm filing the final divorce notice. With full evidence. Let her lawyers try to spin it. You sure? I was sure the day she looked me in the face and lied without blinking. They shook hands. The plan was airtight. The dates were locked. The noose was threaded, hung, and greased. Nolan walked away slowly, each step grounded, deliberate. This wasn't about noise anymore. It was about the rhythm of collapse. And come Monday, the reckoning would begin. Monday, 10:12 a.m., Denver County Courthouse. Civil Division. The courtroom was packed, even though this was supposed to be a preliminary hearing on financial transparency for Civic Future Holdings. A procedural formality. But Nolan had other plans. He entered in silence, tailored black suit, crisp collar, no notes in hand. Across the aisle sat Reese, nervous, shifting in his chair, and Delaney, composed but pale, trying not to meet Nolan's eyes. The judge called it to order. Mr. Briggs, you filed new supplemental documentation this morning. Care to explain? Nolan stood, his voice even. Yes, Your Honor. In addition to the original motion, I've submitted forged authorization forms, bearing my name, and detailed transfer records tied to funds meant for a community rec center. None of these transfers were authorized by me. All connect directly to Mr. Maddox and Civic Future. A murmur swept through the room. The judge glanced at Reese's counsel. Do you contest this? Reese's attorney stood. We weren't given time to review the submission. You've had 5 months to review your client's ethics. Nolan cut in, gaze locked on Reese. Delaney shifted uncomfortably beside Reese. Her hand reached for his thigh. He brushed it off. The judge frowned. These are serious allegations. They're just the start, Nolan said. By week's end, there'll be a federal audit, an IRS inquiry, and, if the timeline holds, a judicial review board hearing tied to Judge Merton's rulings. He turned then, not to the judge, but to his wife. Delaney, he said, voice soft but surgical. I hope you kept your burner phone. You'll need every contact you've got. She blinked. Her face, for the first time, crumbled. Court adjourned. But the damage was permanent. Tuesday morning, 6:02 a.m. Nolan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Untraceable. A message. Just 5 words. You forgot one of us. He stared at it, thumb hovering. 5 minutes later, another came in. This time a photo. It was Nolan, standing outside the courthouse yesterday. The shot was tight, close, from just behind his shoulder. Someone had been following him. Then the real drop came. A file link. Anonymous. Encrypted. He opened it. Video surveillance. Private emails. Voice memos. All spliced together in a sequence too polished for a casual leak. In one clip, Nolan's private investigator was seen entering a restricted server room. In another, edited footage made it look like Nolan was discussing how to fake nonprofit losses. He knew the original files. Knew what was real. This was weaponized fiction. Framed revenge. He called Cole. Someone flipped the narrative, Nolan said. This leak? It's designed to look like I'm the one who built the whole thing. Cole cursed on the other end. Who had access to that kind of footage? Nolan's brain ticked through the options, and one name snapped to the front. Lara. She'd handled video transfers, delivered signed forms. She'd played both sides. She hadn't confessed everything. She'd only confessed enough to seem safe. He called her. No answer. He drove straight to her apartment. Door cracked open. Lights off. Place ransacked. Lara was gone. And now? Nolan wasn't just hunting the guilty anymore. He was being framed for their crime. Wednesday, 3:15 p.m. Cole and Nolan sat in the back of a tinted van outside Reese's new address, an upscale condo in Cherry Creek with views too nice for a man this dirty. He's moved paranoid, Cole said, checking the monitor. Switched his burner. New firewall. He's meeting someone at 4. Who? Cole checked his live facial scanner, tracking building entries. Not sure yet, but I'm betting on Lara. Inside the van, the audio from Reese's living room buzzed through a filtered mic. Static, then voices. Reese, he knows. He's not gonna stop. Unknown voice, female, we keep the leak tight. He's the fall guy. You stay clean. Nolan leaned forward. It was Lara. I should have let him take the fall months ago, Reese snapped. No, Lara hissed. You needed his name. You needed Delaney to make it look real. Pause. Then Reese again. If this backfires, I'm disappearing. You won't get that far, Lara said. Back in the van, Nolan stared at the feed. They're turning on each other, he said quietly. She's trying to cover herself again. Cole leaned back. They're setting the stage. You're the headline. But they made a mistake, Nolan said. What's that? They forgot who I am. Cole grinned. And who's that? Nolan didn't smile. His voice dropped. The guy who installed the second mic under the first. Back inside the condo, Lara and Reese thought they were alone. But Nolan? Nolan was already 3 moves ahead. Thursday, 9:11 a.m. Delaney answered the door in leggings and a silk robe, expecting a package. Instead, 2 IRS agents stood stone-faced on the porch. Delaney Briggs, the woman asked. Yes. We're here under a federal inquiry into fraudulent tax filings connected to Civic Future Holdings and 2 other charities listed under your name. Delaney blinked. There must be a mistake. The agent handed her a folder. Then you'll want to look at this. You're named as the fiduciary officer on 5 wire transfers totaling $312,000. The paperwork leads back to your household address and your work email. I didn't authorize any transfers personally, Delaney stammered. The agent was unmoved. We'll need you to come downtown for a statement. You're not under arrest yet, but we suggest bringing legal representation. From the staircase above, Nolan watched it all. She finally looked up at him. His face was blank, cold, and for the first time, Delaney wasn't worried about jail. She was worried because she realized he planned this. Later that day, Nolan sat in the law firm's executive conference room, facing Rachel and Marcus again, this time across a wall of evidence. Emails, transactions, photos. And now, the IRS subpoena Nolan had quietly leaked himself. This hits the news in 48 hours, Rachel said, flipping through a report. Reese is already lawyering up. Delaney scrambling. But the board is asking, how clean are you, Nolan? He met her eyes. Calm. Direct. I've logged every document I signed. I've archived my authorizations, my timestamps, my calendar audits. I submitted my own request to internal review last month. If there's one false step tied to me, show me. Right now. Rachel glanced at Marcus. He nodded. We checked, Marcus said. You're clean. Nolan leaned forward. Then give me what I need, power of review. Let me trace Reese's full access path through the firm. If this place gets dragged down, I'm making damn sure it's not because we hesitated. Rachel sighed. If we do this, you're not just exposing them. I know, Nolan said. I'm burning what's left of my marriage. Publicly. Are you ready for that? Nolan stood, voice firm. She wasn't my wife the day she picked a signature over a promise. No one argued. The fire was lit, and Nolan had all the oxygen. Later that night, Nolan returned home. The lights were off. Delaney sat alone on the couch, glass of whiskey half empty in her hand. The bottle, one of his best, was open on the table. I need to know how much of this was you, she said without turning around. Define this, Nolan said from the doorway. The leak. The IRS. The press. All of it. He stepped inside. If you have to ask, you already know. She turned slowly, eyes red but sharp. You ruined me. You forged my name. I was manipulated. You were motivated, he cut in. You had chances to stop. You didn't. Her voice broke. I didn't think you'd go this far. That's what makes you and Reese alike, Nolan said coldly. You both think you're the smartest in the room, until the room turns against you. She stood. You loved me. I buried that the moment you looked me in the eye and lied like I didn't matter. They stood inches apart. Old love now a battlefield. I want immunity, she said. If I help expose Reese and Merton. Nolan raised an eyebrow. Now that was interesting. You have hard evidence? Chats? Audio? Maybe more. Then bring it, he said. And don't edit a single second. She nodded once. And in return? He stared. Your name stays intact, she continued. Mine doesn't get shattered. Nolan didn't blink. You shattered yourself, Delaney. I'm just making sure the pieces land in the right places. Then he walked upstairs. Her glass trembled in her hand. Not from the whiskey. From the weight of her own undoing. Friday morning. Nolan stood in front of the community center he'd helped fund 5 years ago. The plaque bearing his name still hung above the entrance, for those who need a second chance. Inside, his old mentor, Diane Roswell, greeted him. You picked a hell of a time to visit, she said. The board called me in, our donors are spooked. They saw the Civic Future name in the filings? Worse, she said. They saw yours. Nolan took a slow breath. I'm going public next week, he said. Every receipt. Every falsified transfer. I'll clear my name and bring down the others. But the center might get caught in the blast. She watched him. You're doing the right thing. Doesn't mean it won't hurt, he said. She touched his arm. Then make it count. He walked the halls after that. Past murals painted by kids who'd come from broken homes. Past classrooms funded by grants. Past hope built brick by brick. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about preserving what mattered. His name wasn't just a weapon. They'd tried to make it a shield for their crimes. But after next week, his name would be something else entirely. Monday, 7:04 p.m. A Blacktown car pulled into a quiet street outside Judge Merton's estate. Nolan stepped out, dressed simply. No briefcase, no entourage. Just a man with a single goal. He rang the doorbell. Merton answered in house slippers and a forced smile. "You've got some nerve showing up here." "I'm giving you a choice," Nolan said. "That's more than you gave anyone else." Inside, Merton led him to a private den, lined with dark wood, stocked with expensive bourbon. The man lived like nothing could touch him. Until now. Nolan placed a flash drive on the coffee table. Surveillance audio, video, paper trail, all tying you to Reese's shell game and land laundering scheme. Merton didn't touch it. "You bluffing again?" "I don't bluff with federal prosecutors." Silence. "Then, what do you want?" Nolan's tone was surgical. "Withdraw from all pending land rulings. Privately recuse yourself from any case tied to Reese. And leak a letter to the bar expressing concern about administrative missteps." Merton laughed bitterly. "You want me to throw myself under the bus? I want you to pick whether it rolls over your head or your career." He stood. "You've got 48 hours. As Nolan reached the door, Merton called after him. "This is revenge, Briggs." "No," Nolan said without turning. "This is a correction." And when the door clicked shut, the judge sat still because for the first time, he wasn't holding the gavel anymore. Tuesday, 3:39 p.m. Reese hadn't been to the firm in days. He'd cut off contact, ditched his usual haunts, stopped calling Delaney. But Cole's surveillance traced him to a private co-working office across town. A temporary bunker. Nolan watched from the feed as Reese shuffled papers, paced in front of a whiteboard, barked into a burner phone. He looked nothing like the slick associate Nolan had once mentored. He looked hunted. Inside the audio feed, "Reese, they're closing in." He's flipped the judge. "The firm's cutting me off. I need leverage, anything." Unknown voice. "You had it. Delaney was your cover." "Reese." She flipped too. "She's with him now." He slammed his fist on the desk. "I'll go public. Leak everything." The voice on the line hissed back. "Do that, and we all go down." This wasn't built for panic. Reese was unraveling. Cole paused the feed. "Want to move?" "Not yet," Nolan said. "What are you waiting for?" Nolan stared at the screen. "I want the moment he realizes there's no one left on his side." Wednesday, 11:12 a.m. Delaney sat across from Nolan in a closed-door meeting at the law firm's secure conference room. She looked like a ghost of herself. No makeup, hair pulled back, eyes hollow. A legal assistant recorded every word. "I have 4 voicemails," she began. 2 are Reese threatening to expose the judge if he gets burned. The others are planning calls, how they coordinated withdrawals. "I forwarded them to your encrypted line." Nolan nodded, poker-faced. "Reese also kept records of bribes. I can testify to seeing one in person." "And in exchange?" Nolan asked. "I want immunity. Partial at least. Keep me out of jail. Let me rebuild." He stared for a long time. "You're not the victim here, Delaney." "I know," she whispered. "But I'm not the monster either. I just got greedy." He knew how to talk to me. "You were—" "Don't," he interrupted. "Don't rewrite history to soften your landing." She swallowed. "Then why give me this meeting?" "Because your testimony is worth more than your silence." She leaned forward. "After all this, do you hate me?" Nolan didn't flinch. "No. I just see you clearly now. And that's worse." He stood, collected the file. "You'll get your deal. But understand, this doesn't save you." Delaney's voice broke. "Then what does?" Nolan paused at the door. "Nothing." Wednesday night. Inside Nolan's private study, the final pieces came together. Every document was ready. Every voice memo labeled. Every line of testimony time-stamped. Delaney's recordings. Reese's panic. Judge Merton's dirty rulings. All cross-linked, all verified. Cole entered, holding a folder. "Your court motion was approved. Emergency session set for Friday." Nolan looked up. "And the media?" "Timed. Anonymous drop goes live 2 hours before. Once the docket is public, they'll devour it." Nolan exhaled. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was surgical justice. Calculated. Unavoidable. And clean. "Reese?" he asked. "Still hiding. Paranoia's eating him alive." "Good," Nolan said. He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. "I want them all standing when it hits. No one escapes. Not even in rumor." Cole nodded. This? It's going to be a bloodbath. Nolan's voice was steady. Not blood. Pause. Truth. Friday. 6:03 a.m. Nolan sat alone in his office, the sun just beginning to bleed orange across the skyline. In front of him, a flash drive in a black box. No label. No logo. Just wait. Inside the drive, the master file. He'd spent the last month stitching it together like a prosecutor, a journalist, and a man who had nothing left to lose. 33 documents. 17 audio recordings. 5 video clips. 1 airtight narrative. Every step of their deception. Every betrayal. Every dollar they stole. By 6:20, the file was encrypted and scheduled for timed release through 3 outlets. A legal watchdog blog, a national newswire, and the Denver Times all would receive the file at 10 a.m., 60 minutes before Nolan stepped into court. The timing was precise, controlled, unforgiving. At 6:29, he pressed enter. Upload confirmed. He leaned back in his chair, watching the city slowly wake up, unaware it was about to witness a controlled demolition. Not a scandal, a reckoning. 10:01 a.m. sharp. Emails pinged across inboxes nationwide. Blog headlines auto-posted. Newsrooms scrambled to verify. And within minutes, the internet flooded with 3 names: Reese Maddox, Delaney Briggs, Judge Walter Merton. Words like embezzlement, fraud, bribery, and judicial corruption painted the headlines like blood on tile. At the courthouse, reporters swarmed the sidewalk. Camera crews jockeyed for position. Microphones snapped up the chaos like heat-seeking missiles. Inside, Reese entered with his lawyer, sweating, mumbling into his phone. Then came Delaney, alone, in a navy blue blazer too stiff for comfort, face pale, lips tight. She didn't look at anyone, not even Nolan. The hearing hadn't even started, and her image was already cycling through national news feeds. Nolan Briggs, former defense attorney, releases evidence tying his wife, a local judge, and a junior partner to financial fraud inside a charitable foundation. Click, swipe, retweet. Outside, a protester held up a sign. Justice should wear more than a wedding ring. Reese stared at it in horror. Delaney just closed her eyes. And Nolan? He walked into the courtroom like he wasn't on trial, like he was coming home. Inside the courtroom, the judge, one not tied to Merton, called the hearing to order. It was a civil fraud complaint, but the room buzzed like it was a televised trial. Nolan stood, calm. This evidence shows a systemic manipulation of nonprofit status to fund illegal land development, falsified tax documentation, and deliberate misrepresentation to federal and state entities. He slid the folders across the table, one by one. Signed approvals forged using my credentials. He pointed to Reese. Financial instructions funneled through my firm without my consent. Then he turned to Delaney, and aided, knowingly, by someone I once trusted to stand beside me. Her face didn't move. Not a blink. Not a word. Across the room, the federal investigator assigned to the case sat taking notes. He already had most of the file. Nolan had made sure of it. But hearing it live? That was different. I request immediate protective separation from all entities tied to this scheme, and request the court freeze assets connected to the following individuals. He listed the names. Delaney, Reese, Merton. The judge nodded. Motion under review. Initial freeze granted pending final submission. Reese whispered something to his lawyer. Delaney swallowed but stayed frozen. And in that moment, everything shifted. Because this wasn't just exposure. It was consequence. That night, Nolan returned home for the last time. Boxes were already packed. He'd cleared his office. Cleared his name. Now it was time to clear the air. He stood in the doorway of what used to be his bedroom. The sheets were different. The scent of Delaney's perfume still faint on the curtains. But it wasn't his home anymore. Not really. Downstairs, she waited on the couch. Alone. No drink. No smirk. Just the weight of everything she'd helped destroy. He stepped in, slow. She looked up. You're leaving tonight? Yes. Silence. Then she asked, why didn't you ruin me completely? Nolan paused. You did a good enough job on your own. She nodded, a tear finally slipping down her cheek. I did love you, she whispered. Once. He looked at her for the last time. I know, he said, but not enough to keep you honest. He turned, walked out, and didn't look back. The door closed with the softest click. But the chapter? It slammed shut. Saturday, 3:14 p.m. A phone rang inside a cheap motel on the edge of Denver. Reese answered, pacing between a worn mattress and blackout curtains. You're late, he snapped. On the other end, a distorted voice replied, your name's on every feed. You're done. No one wants to touch you. I have evidence, Reese hissed. I kept backups. You help me release it. We pin it back on Nolan. Make it look like a smear campaign. Too late. No, Reese barked. You don't get it. He wins and we all rot. Merton's hiding. Lara ghosted. Delaney flipped. I'm the last one standing and I'm not going out quiet. Silence. Then the voice said, you really think you're the victim? Reese stared at the wall. I was smart. I was careful. And they all used me. A pause. You used everyone first. The line clicked dead. Reese threw the phone at the wall, shattering it. This wasn't justice. This was vengeance in a suit and tie. And if he was going down, he'd try to take Nolan with him. Sunday morning. Nolan was on his third cup of black coffee, seated in his new temporary office downtown. Sunlight filtered through dusty blinds as his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. He picked up. Nolan, came the voice. Familiar. Worn. Lara. A beat passed. I messed up, she said. I know. I didn't think Reese would drag me that deep. But I know what he's planning. He has a drive. Fake files, manipulated clips, enough to make it look like you orchestrated this. I'm aware. But you're not ready for where he's going to drop it. He's trying to blackmail a reporter. Threatening to leak everything unless they print his side. Nolan's voice stayed calm. Can you stop it? I can get the reporter to stall. But not forever. And the files. I know where he hid them. Nolan stood, grabbing his coat. Then meet me in 20. Why help me now? She asked. Because you know this doesn't end in rumors. He paused. It ends in proof. Click. And just like that, the last betrayer decided which side she was on. Sunday night. A downtown pub. Quiet booth in the back. Low lights. No cameras. Nolan slid into the seat across from Avery Wells, senior journalist with the Denver Ledger. Known for taking down politicians and covering high-profile corporate fraud. Reese had picked the wrong target. You know why I'm here, Nolan said. Avery nodded. Reese reached out. Wanted to correct the narrative. Offered files he says prove you framed him. And you believed him? I didn't say that. She placed a USB on the table. I haven't touched it. Something felt off. Then Lara called. Nolan didn't even look at the drive. Play it. Avery pulled out her laptop and opened the file. The video showed Nolan speaking, spliced, choppy, words stitched together from separate clips. His voice sounded off. Deliberate manipulations. Deep fake? She asked. Poor one, Nolan said. Audio was stitched by AI, but the original material is all real. Just rearranged. The source files are in the master case, all time-stamped and verified. He slid a folder across the table. Avery opened it and froze. Everything inside lined up. Reese's emails. Delaney's voice. Merton's land deals. The whole machine. She looked up. This is ironclad. It's already in federal hands, Nolan said. But I want your headline to be about the truth. Not a desperate man's last scream. Avery smiled faintly. You don't want to clear your name? I already did. He stood. Tell it how it happened. And end it properly. She watched him walk out the door. Then turned to the file again. Because for the first time in her career, she wasn't writing a takedown. She was writing a legacy. Monday. Noon. An unmarked car pulled into a parking garage in Midtown. Cole stepped out first. Nolan followed, expression locked, carrying a leather satchel. Reese was already waiting. He looked thinner, angrier, desperate. You brought backup? He sneered. Nolan said nothing. He opened the satchel and placed 3 documents on the hood of Reese's car. Withdrawal letters. Merton's signed resignation. Delaney's sworn deposition. And Lara's testimony. You're surrounded. Reese laughed bitterly. So that's it? You want me to roll over? No, Nolan said. I want you to know I didn't beat you in court. Reese's face twisted. Then how? I beat you in every room before you even showed up. Silence. Reese looked at the papers, then up at Nolan. You're a bastard. Nolan nodded once. Maybe, but I'm a free one. He turned and walked away. Reese stood frozen, because in that moment, he realized Nolan had done the one thing no one expected. He won without destroying himself. And Reese had nothing left to burn but his own name. Wednesday, 8:40 a.m. The morning headlines painted the final picture. Judge Merton resigns amid explosive corruption case. Whistleblower lawyer clears name in financial conspiracy. Cheating, fraud, injustice, the case that rocked Colorado's legal circles. And beneath them, a quieter headline. Nolan Briggs appointed interim ethics advisor to State Bar Oversight Committee. He stared at it in silence. Not pride, not triumph, just a kind of clarity. His phone buzzed, a voicemail from an old client. Heard what happened. You didn't deserve any of that. You stayed you. Thought you should know. Nolan didn't smile, but he closed his eyes for just a moment. Let the quiet in. He walked out onto his balcony, letting the wind hit him. Crisp. Real. His name wasn't trending anymore, but it was clean. And sometimes, that's the most powerful kind of fame. That night, Nolan stood in his storage unit. One dim bulb above, the concrete cold beneath his shoes. On a shelf in the back was a small silver hard drive labeled simply, Delaney Cam, Master Feed. All the footage, the audio, the betrayal, her hands on another man, her voice whispering lies, the conspiracy in motion. He plugged it into a portable screen, watched a few seconds, the exact moment Delaney laughed as Reese said, "He's too blind to see it." Nolan watched himself in the footage, silent, not present, a ghost in his own house. Then he paused the video and deleted it. Every file, every clip. The screen flickered, then went dark. Some ghosts weren't meant to be kept. Some truths were meant to be faced and then released. He stepped out, locked the unit, and tossed the hard drive into the dumpster on his way out. Not because he was hiding the past, but because he finally didn't need to keep watching it anymore. Friday morning. A modest room in the back of a community legal center. Sunlight through blinds. Stacked folders. A coffee pot that had clearly lived through worse. Nolan stood in front of 6 young attorneys, all under 30. All here on fellowships. All staring at him like he was the headline, but not the scandal. The mentor. He handed out printouts, not of his story, but of a case study. How trust is built and broken inside corporate structures. Not revenge. Reform. He spoke clearly. People will take shortcuts and call them innovation. They'll use charm as a mask. They'll call ambition a strategy. You have to see through all of that. One woman raised her hand. What if it's someone close to you? Someone you trust? Nolan paused. Then you remember this. Law doesn't care how close someone stood to you when they lied. It only cares how far you're willing to go to tell the truth. The room fell silent. But it wasn't heavy. It was sharp, focused. And for the first time in months, Nolan saw what came next. Not a trial. Not a takedown. A legacy. Monday, 9:06 a.m. A quiet courtroom. No media. No flashing lights. Just facts. Reese sat at the defense table, his suit wrinkled, eyes sunken. His attorney beside him looked exhausted. Across the aisle, the prosecution lined up documents like weapons. The judge entered. Gavel dropped. Mr. Maddox, you were charged with 4 counts of fraud, 1 count of wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit tax evasion. Your plea. Reese stood slowly. His voice cracked. Guilty. A soft gasp came from the back row. No press, just a handful of quiet watchers. Nolan was one of them. No emotion on his face. Just presence. The judge nodded. Sentencing to follow next week. Bail denied. It was over. Reese turned once, just for a second, eyes searching for a familiar face. No Delaney. No Merton. No Laura. No one. He left in cuffs. As the courtroom cleared, Nolan stood outside near the hallway window. Sunlight washed over the floor like some kind of cosmic reset. Rachel walked up beside him. He went down harder than expected, she said quietly. Nolan nodded. He went down exactly how he built it. She paused, then smiled faintly. You could have buried them all. Publicly. On camera. But you didn't. I didn't need to destroy them, he replied. I just needed to make sure they'd never rise again. And with that, Nolan turned and walked away from everything they ever took from him. Not because he lost, but because he won differently. Saturday afternoon. A quiet mountain cabin Nolan had rented. No Wi-Fi, no noise, no headlines. Just him, a journal, and the sound of wind through pine. He stood outside, watching the horizon stretch out like it owed him nothing, but somehow gave him peace. He thought about the last year, Delaney's betrayal, Reese's ambition, the lies, the cameras, the files, the fire. Then he thought about the people who didn't betray him. Cole, Rachel, the truth, and most of all, himself. He sat on the porch, opened the journal, and wrote one line. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what they did. It means remembering who I became because of it. He closed the book and smiled, just a little. For once, not out of strategy, but out of clarity. He wasn't rebuilding his old life. He was building something better, stronger, quieter, real. And for the first time since everything fell apart, he was finally free. Before you go, let me ask you something. If someone shattered your trust, would you destroy them or outgrow them? Tell me in the comments, and let me know, where in the world are you watching from? If this story gripped you, if it made you feel something, then do one thing before you scroll. Subscribe for more thriller, betrayal, and revenge stories that hit hard. Like this if Nolan Briggs gave you chills. And don't forget to comment your favorite moment below. We'll meet again in the next epic revenge story. Until then, take care of your truth. And remember, sometimes karma doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. See you soon.